The morning my daughter called to say she was coming over, I was in the garage rebuilding a carburetor I didn't need to rebuild. That's what I do when I'm happy. I fix things. I've been fixing things my whole life. Engines, leaky pipes, broken fence posts. My hands always knew what to do even when my head didn't. Her name is Sandra. She's 43 years old, and she has her mother's eyes and her grandfather's appetite for other people's money. I didn't know that last part yet, not fully. I suspected it the way you suspect rain when the air smells a certain way, not a certainty, just a feeling sitting in the back of your chest. I'm Harold. I'm 74 years old. I spent 31 years as a civil engineer for the county, and when I retired, I took my pension, my savings, my paid-off house on Delwood Lane, and my 1967 Ford Mustang, and I told myself I'd earned every single quiet morning that followed. My wife, Carol, passed 3 years ago, pancreatic cancer. 6 weeks from diagnosis to the end. I wasn't ready, but you're never ready for that. After she was gone, the house got quieter than I knew a house could get, but it was still my house. Still had her garden out back, her cookbooks on the shelf, her handwriting on the recipe cards tucked inside them. I wasn't ready to let any of that go either. Sandra visited more after Carol died. At first, I thought it was grief, the two of them pulling together, daughter and father. She brought her husband, a man named Derek who sold insurance and had the handshake of a man who wants something. Their 2 kids would run through the hallway and I'd let them because the hallway needed running through. It was good to have noise in the house again. But somewhere in those visits, something shifted. I didn't notice it the way you notice a door slamming. I noticed it the way you notice a room getting cold slowly, and only once you're already shivering. She started asking questions. Not daughter questions. Inventory questions. Dad, have you thought about what you want to do with the house long term? Dad, Derek's cousin is a financial advisor. Maybe you should sit down with him. Dad, this place is a lot to maintain alone, isn't it? I answered honestly each time. The house was paid off. I maintained it fine. I had a financial advisor I'd worked with for 12 years and trusted completely. I didn't need Derek's cousin. She'd nod and smile and change the subject, and I'd think the conversation was over. It was never over. The morning she called to say she was coming, she said Derek would be with her, and that they had something they wanted to talk through. I put down the carburetor and washed my hands twice. They arrived at 11. Sandra had brought a coffee cake from the bakery downtown, which I recognized as a peace offering disguised as a gesture. I made coffee. We sat at the kitchen table where I'd eaten 10,000 meals with Carol and the kids were small and Sandra herself had done her homework on Tuesday nights. I remember thinking how strange it is that a table can hold so much history and still just be a table. Derek opened a folder. I looked at the folder the way I'd look at a water stain on the ceiling, noticing it, tracking it, not reacting yet. "Daw," Sandra said, and her voice had a texture I hadn't heard before, rehearsed and gentle. At the same time, we've been doing a lot of thinking. About you, about your situation. My situation, I said. Living alone out here. This house is 4 bedrooms, Harold, Derek said. He called me Harold when he wanted to sound like an equal. It's a lot of space, a lot of upkeep. And property taxes in this county went up again. I'm aware, I said. I pay them. Sandra reached across and touched my hand. We found a place, a retirement community over in Millbrook. It's beautiful, Dad. They have a wood shop, a walking trail, organized activities. I have a wood shop, I said. It's called my garage. She smiled in that patient way that made me feel like I was being managed. We just want you to be somewhere that has support, where people look in on you, where if something happened, nothing's happened. Not yet. That landed differently than she intended, I think. Or maybe exactly as she intended. I looked at Derek's folder. He hadn't opened it yet, but his hand was resting on top of it like a man waiting for his cue. "What's in the folder, Derek?" I said. He glanced at Sandra. She gave a small nod I wasn't supposed to see. He opened it. There were papers inside. Several pages, official-looking, with small print and signature lines highlighted in yellow. He turned them to face me across the table. "It's a property transfer agreement," he said. "If you were to move to Millbrook, the house would transfer to our names. It would simplify things. No probate, no delays. It's actually the cleanest way to handle." "You want me to sign my house over to you?" I said. "It's not like that, Dad," Sandra said quickly. "That's what those papers say, though. It protects the asset." "Estate planning." "I have an estate plan," I said. "I've had one for 9 years. My attorney drew it up." That stopped them both for a moment. Derek recalibrated. "Well, this would just be a supplemental—" "I'm not signing anything today," I said. I stood up and refilled my coffee, even though it didn't need refilling. "I appreciate you coming. The coffee cake is good." They stayed another 40 minutes. Sandra cried a little, which hurt me in the deep, specific way that only your children can hurt you. She said she was scared of losing me the way she'd lost her mother. She said she couldn't sleep some nights worrying about me alone in this house. She said the retirement community was genuinely lovely, and she just wanted me to at least look at it. I told her I'd think about it. After they left, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The coffee cake was still on the counter. I thought about Carol. I thought about what she would have said. She would have said, "Harold, don't borrow trouble." She also would have said, "But keep your eyes open, honey." I kept my eyes open. I called my attorney the following Monday. His name is Robert, and I've known him since our sons played Little League together. I told him everything. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "Harold, let's talk about a trust." I didn't know much about irrevocable trusts before that call. By the end of it, I understood the basics. You transfer your assets into the trust. The trust owns them. A trustee, in my case Robert himself, manages them according to your instruction. Your children can't pressure you to sign anything because there's nothing left for you to sign. The assets aren't yours anymore in the legal sense. They belong to the trust. And the trust, per my instructions, had very specific plans for them that did not include Derek's folder. It took 6 weeks to set up properly. During those 6 weeks, Sandra called 3 times. She sent me a brochure for Millbrook with certain amenities circled in pen, which I found both thoughtful and transparent. She stopped by once with the grandchildren, which I enjoyed genuinely. I played checkers with my grandson on the back porch and felt, for an hour, like everything was simply what it appeared to be. Derek called once, which surprised me. He asked if I'd had time to review the paperwork. I told him I'd been busy. He said the offer was time-sensitive, which is something people say when they want to create urgency where none exists. I told him I understood, and thanked him for calling. The Mustang I handled separately. I have a friend named George who lives 2 counties over, a man I've known since 1987. He's a car man the same way I'm a car man. We met at an auction and stayed friends through 4 decades of marriages and children and losses and all the ordinary enormities of living. I called George and asked him if he wanted to buy the Mustang. He said he'd always wanted to buy the Mustang. We agreed on a price that was fair to both of us, and he drove up on a Saturday in October and drove it home. I watched it go down Delwood Lane and around the corner, and I felt something complicated that I won't try to explain except to say it wasn't regret. The house transfer into the trust was completed on a Thursday. Robert called me that afternoon and told me it was done. I said thank you. I sat in the garage for a while after that, not working on anything, just sitting. Sandra called that weekend. She asked if I'd thought any more about Millbrook. I told her I'd actually been doing quite a bit of thinking, and that I'd love for her and Derek to come over the following Saturday. I had something I wanted to share with them. She sounded pleased. That was the part that cost me the most, hearing the pleasure in her voice, the assumption that she'd worn me down. They came on Saturday, same table. I made coffee again. No coffee cake this time. I told them I'd met with Robert. I told them I'd been doing serious thinking about my future and my assets and my estate. I told them I'd taken steps to make sure everything was in order. Sandra was nodding, leaning forward slightly, the way you lean toward good news. I told them the house was in a trust. I told them the trust was irrevocable. I told them the beneficiary of the trust, per my written instructions, was a nonprofit organization called the Millbrook County Elder Care Foundation, which I found, with some satisfaction, while researching the very town they'd suggested I move to. Sandra went very still. Derek said, "What?" I told them about the Mustang, too. I told them George had it now, and that I'd used part of that money to fund a small scholarship at the community college in Carol's name, which I had been meaning to do for 2 years and was glad to have finally done. "Dad," Sandra said. Her voice had lost its rehearsed texture. "Dad, I don't understand." "I think you do," I said. "We were trying to help you." "You were trying to position yourselves," I said. I didn't say it with anger. I want to be clear about that. I said it the way you state a measurement. Here's what this is. Here's what it isn't. The folder, Sandra. Derek's cousin, the financial advisor. The brochure with the amenities circled. I've been a practical man my whole life. I know what a plan looks like. Derek started to say something about misunderstanding, about intentions, about how this wasn't what it seemed. I let him finish. Then I told them I loved Sandra. I told her that genuinely because it was true, and because some truths need saying even in hard moments. I told her that Carol had loved her too, and that the love was not conditional on anything that happened at this table. But I also told her that I'd spent 31 years calculating load-bearing limits, and that I knew exactly how much weight a structure could carry before it failed. "This," I said, nodding at the space between us, "is not going to fail, but it's also not going to be what you plan." They left without finishing their coffee. I heard Derek say something in a low voice as they walked to the car, but I didn't try to hear it. I stood at the kitchen window and watched them drive away the same way I'd watched the Mustang go, feeling something complicated that I won't try to simplify. Here's what I know about being 74 years old. Your body keeps score of everything. Every late night, every hard winter, every grief you push through by sheer will because there was work to do and a family to hold together. I felt all of it standing at that window. I felt Carol's absence the way I feel it every day, like a room in the house that you keep accidentally walking toward. But I also felt something else, something quieter and more durable. I called Robert on Monday and told him everything had gone as expected. He said good. He told me there was one more detail. I might want to consider a specific clause in the trust document allowing me to designate a secondary beneficiary, a human one, in the event I changed my mind about anything. He said there was no obligation, but the door could stay open if I wanted it to. I told him I'd think about it. I did think about it. I thought about it for most of that autumn. I raked Carol's garden even though I don't know exactly what grows there anymore, just that she planted it and it comes back every year without being asked. I thought about Sandra at 8 years old asking me to show her how to read a blueprint. I thought about the way she held Carol's hand in the hospice and didn't leave for 3 days. I thought about the distance between who someone is and what fear and money can make them do, and whether those are the same person or two different people living in the same body. I don't have a clean answer to that. I'm not sure there is one. What I have is this house. What I have is the morning light coming through the kitchen window at an angle Carol always said was her favorite thing about this room. What I have is the ability to sit at this table without being afraid of a folder. Sandra called in November. She didn't talk about the trust or the house or Millbrook. She asked if I wanted to come for Thanksgiving. I said yes. I brought a pie from the bakery downtown, the same one she'd brought the coffee cake from, and I sat at her table and watched my grandchildren eat too much. And I felt the ordinary grace of a family that is broken in some ways and intact in others, which is what every family is, which is what mine has always been. We didn't talk about any of it. Not that day. There will be a day, I think. A day when she and I sit down without Derek, without an agenda, without a folder on the table, and we say the things that actually need saying. I'm not in a hurry. At 74, you learn that some conversations need to age a little before they're ready. Until then, I have my mornings, I have the garage and the workbench and the things that need fixing and the things that don't but that I fix anyway because my hands need work the way my mind needs quiet. I have Robert, who answers the phone on the second ring and never makes me feel foolish for calling. I have George, 2 counties over, keeping the Mustang in better shape than I probably would have. I have Carol's recipe cards in her handwriting, telling me exactly how much of everything to use. And I have this. The knowledge that over a long life, you accumulate not just wrinkles and worn-out knees and a list of people you've lost. You accumulate judgment. You accumulate the ability to see a plan for what it is before it fully unfolds. You accumulate the quiet, specific confidence of a man who has built enough things to know which ones are worth protecting. My name is Harold. I'm 74 years old. I live alone on Delwood Lane, in a house that belongs, legally, to a trust and in every way that matters, to me, and I'm not going anywhere.